Hello world, welcome to the journalist chat today, and today we have a very special guest from different part of the world. We have a guest from Germany and we have a guest from Dhaka, Bangladesh. So please welcome our guest tonight. Hi Karan, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. So hi Mishubai, if I first asking the questions about how are you, before I just want to ensure around 100 journalists affected by the COVID-19 in Dhaka around the Bangladesh. So in these circumstances, I don't know how it will be okay if I say how are you.
If you say how am I, then I have to say I am still okay and I am still good, and I am not yet proved that COVID positive. Many of my colleagues in different media they are positive, and now we are really very worried about the proper testing of my colleagues. I mean, not only from Jamuna TV but also from other television channels, because the television reporters and camera person they are really frontliners. Every day they have to go to the assignment, they have to go, there are some assignment which they could not cover through the visual through the virtual connectivity. Sometimes they have to go to the hospitals, find out the loopholes of there, find out the risks of the doctors. So they are really very risky. My drivers are the drivers who are working for television stations, they are very risky. So in the meantime, we have already established a dedicated COVID-19 testing center for the broadcast journalists here working in Bangladesh. That we have an organization that's called Broadcast Journalist Centers. Daily, we have tested 20 persons according to the choice of the doctors after examining their situation, their temperature, their body situation, etc. And it's very really vulnerable that last 4 days we are doing this, and almost every day among 20 we find 5 positive people. That means almost 25% of the television people and their family members are infected in last 4 or 5 days. So we have decided to increase the number of testing from tomorrow. Tomorrow it will be like 30 every day, and our leaders of broadcast journalist centers, they are our more senior people, our bosses. They are talking with some hospitals to dedicate a hospital for the journalist people. Like police have a dedicated hospitals, like other people like military have their dedicated hospitals,
Yeah, I
but in the
think
but in
Yeah,
this
I
crisis
think this
period.
is and this is a really, it's a really horrible series going on. So, Karan, if I ask you, we also know the after the China, so there's a in USA and also the Italy, the COVID-19 hit USA and Italy. So, what are the present condition of Germany, the area you are living right now?
Well, where I'm living right now, it's we are starting to opening up schools again, stores. People are outside. It is actually trying to going back to some normal life, which is impossible. But there is a lot of feelings of we can go back to a lot of the life that we had before the virus, which is actually quite dangerous. And because I feel like people are a little too optimistic here. Now it's hard not to be able to, have schools open, etc. But it makes people a little too confident that they have somehow managed with the virus, but the virus is still here. The virus can come very easily again, and so we'll have to see how that goes. But right now, Germany is starting to go back to opening up its borders, traveling. People are talking about summer vacation.
Yeah, this is a kind of vacation for the people, those who want to enjoy, but this is not for everyone. So, Mishu,
No.
guys, we know that when the COVID-19 started, and a lot of diplomat and who left Bangladesh, and there's a few diplomat maybe they're still living, and I feel you know better. So, if I ask you, you had an experience to work with the diplomat for a long time, and we know that one of the crises around Bangladesh and around the world. And can you please share with us your experience to work with the Rohingya crisis and also this diplomatic context? And it will be amazing for the audience.
Yeah. Before that, I want to share with my German friend what she said, that things are going to be normalized day by day. Especially the government is trying to make the things normal, make the people's day-to-day life normal. And same thing, was supposed to happen here in Bangladesh. You know, the mosque was being opened, the market being opened. But I am really proud. I am really proud on my general people, on my common people, that you know, the people of Dhaka is almost 2 crore. I mean 200 million. 200 million people live in this city. So if 5% people of this city is going out, then it will be a massacre. But it's really a matter of great proud that most of the people are not in the outside. Even when government took the decision to open up the markets, then the market committee and the market owners, like Jomuna Future Park, that's the biggest market in the country, sometimes said it's the biggest market in the Asia, Southeast Asia. They also decide not to open. And the Boshundhar city, another big market, they decide not to open because of public health risk. So most of the people are not in the outside till now, and the government extended the holiday up to 13th May. At the same time, you know, Holy Eid is there, and government imposed ban on any kind of transport movement before and after 7 days of the Eid, because you know Eid is a big festival. So that's the country situation. At the same time, if I want to talk about the diplomats working here in Dhaka, you know, before some hours I got a notification from British High Commission. They have arranged another 3 chartered flight for the British citizen who want to go back to London. Uh, but it's an interesting case. Interesting case when London's situation was the worst. At that time, also some people traveling from Dhaka to London. Now the situation is almost like same. Rather, Dhaka situation is far better than London. Sometimes the British citizens are living in Dhaka. But if I talk about the diplomats, most of the diplomats, especially in the big missions like USA, like UK, Germany, Netherlands, India, most of they are in still in Dhaka, because no mission chief, as so far I know, no mission chief is not leaving Dhaka. So who are leaving? That was the question. And sometimes I try to find out what kind of people are living Dhaka. Most of them are Bangladeshi born US citizen or Bangladeshi born British citizen. So they are Bangladeshi people basically, and there are some British native British people also who are working there in the private sector. But the embassy staff, they are not living it. There are some embassy who are working in visa section, who are working in finance and audit section, who are working in account section, admin section. They might living, but the genuine diplomat, like the ambassador, like his deputy, like political head, like defense head, they are not living it, because the embassy is running here, and they have to be there to taking care of their own people. Like, as no one of my diplomat, I mean Bangladeshi diplomat, is leaving his work station and coming back to Dhaka in this crisis moment, because you know traveling is also a risk. So diplomats are leaving. That's a very wrong idea. The Sometimes the native nationals are living to their own country, and I have talked at least with 5 of them who are Bangladeshi British, that why you are living 7 or 8 days ago, because that time London situation was really horrible. They said some of them have their parents in there, or some of them have their parents are here, but their wives and children is there. So they are really afraid of that. At the same time, the people who are from USA, they have the issue of insurance. You know, if he got infected in COVID, or
Yeah.
if he will die, or his family member will die, there is the issue of insurance. So that will be much bigger, much higher if he stayed in the USA rather than in Dhaka. So that are the issues
Yeah,
basically.
Mishu, there's a lot of reports who in the national media who has been reported like the diplomats are leaving. So regarding that reference, I was basically asking the questions like how diplomats are leaving. So yeah, if I just back to the Karen, so you have been working 20 years. I mean, more than 20 years, along with the survivors around the world. And I mean, we know that like crisis is going on around the world. So fine, we are talking about 20 years working with genocide survivors. What is mean to you?
What does it mean to me, or what is
Yes.
it meant to
And
me?
what about you experience?
What is it meant to me? For me, it's become a life mission. So I studied genocide. I studied the Holocaust. And for me, it was important to understand how could it have happened. I'm originally from Germany, and I lived most of my life in the United States. But it was for me really important to understand, how can we as a people commit genocide? How is that possible? And so I became very interested in understanding this phenomena. And part of that it was very important for me to understand it also from those who went through it and survivors who lived through it. And so I became part of an organization and an institute to interview Holocaust survivors all over the world. And then as part of that work was not only to interview survivors and document their experiences for commemoration for their own remembrance, but also for education, so that we can understand what people have lived through, but also to give them a chance to actually talk about this. And there's something that always, and that's something that I've experienced with talking with survivors from many different genocides too, than Rwanda, Guatemala, Armenian survivors even. I've got to meet a few many years ago, because that's over 100 years ago, the genocide. But from many different countries, who all talk about, have had this experience where there was a time in their life where the world said, you're not allowed to live. You should be dead because of who you are, who you represent, who you believe in, or who you are. And to me, what was important is that they have to understand that there's people in this world who don't believe that, and that it's important for us to give them back a sense of importance, that the world is interested in who they are, that the world is interested in hearing their story, and that the world is here to make it a better place and to learn from it. So that's sort of, in a sense, my personal motivation. And having
if I actually just added one of the questions is like, so though this is a kind of more political, is like, so from the very beginning we saw that like UN said it might be a genocide, and rather than say this is an ethnic cleansing. So when you were doing the study, so you were studying Rohingya survivors as genocide survivors?
So that's a good question. And that's an important question for us too, because one of the work we've done for many years, where we've interviewed survivors of genocides that were generally acknowledged as having been designated genocides because of all the work and the research and the information that has come out since. We then began to also talk about, well, it's important that we continue to document genocides that happened in the past. But if we want to learn from it, and if our mission is to make the world a better place and prevent future genocides through educational means, we know that conflicts are still happening in the world. Is there a way to document and start documenting conflicts or survivors from conflicts before they end up as a genocide, so that these stories maybe can become part of journalists, policymakers, decision makers, to hear them before it is too late, before it goes into, sort of in those later stages of becoming a genocide. And that's what made us become involved in starting to document with survivors of current conflicts, which then in 2015 and in 2016 and 17, and what was going on in Myanmar and refugees going into Bangladesh, it became important for us to also understand what's going on here. And that is what brought us out to Cox's Bazar in 2017 in the fall, and to visit one of the refugee camps. And I think we started out in Kota Palong, to hear from refugees and individuals who had just fled, to understand what they've experienced, why they fled. And by listening to a number of survivors, the stories that we were starting to hear, that for me, at the time, it wasn't about, is it a genocide, is it not a genocide? It's about listening to their stories, listening to what they wanted to talk about. And what I started to hear were stories that made me remind myself of other survivor stories I've heard from different genocides, and where I started to think, there's a strategy here that was used in order to have people flee and run for their lives. And the familiarities of the stories and the similarities with other genocides genocide survivors became very apparent to me. So for me, it was very quickly clear that what we're looking at is a genocide that was occurring in Myanmar.
Yeah, thank you. So if I back to the Mishubai, and we know that after the 1982, when the Myanmar government first denied the Rohingya people not as a citizen, and after that, Bangladesh basically one of the innocent victim of this conflict and crisis. So if I ask you, like, what was your experience, because you have been working for a long time, what was your experience when Karen was talking about like documenting the genocide survivors? There's a lot of documents around the world. So, but it's still the crisis is going on. So what was your experience, and what about
Yeah,
you?
I was hearing Karen, and the genocide is a big thing all over the world, and we the Bangladeshi people, we were not there on that time in 1971. The huge genocide happened here in Bangladesh. The Pakistani people killed 30 lakhs people. I mean, 3 million people here in Bangladesh, and my grandfather and they are killed on that time. So that was a big issue when Bangladesh took these Rohingya people in our motherland. So that was the inside issue of our leadership as well as the common people of Bangladesh, because we know the pain, we know the sorrow, we know the sufferings. And what happened after that? After that, 11 lakhs people, I mean more than 1 million people here in Bangladesh. It's a very density populated country, and all are equipped in the small city like Cox's Bazar. Currently, you know about Cox's Bazar. That is our biggest city for tourists. That is our biggest city for our overall tourism activities. So everything is almost collapsed. But Bangladesh is taking these people for their own feelings, for their feelings in 1971. What happened with us? And Bangladesh took the responsibility. At the same time, we got huge response from our friends from the Western world like USA, UK, even Germany, Canada. They all are with us. We got huge support from UN also. But at the same time, the question is now when they will back. And then, Myanmar is a disgusting country because their system of government and their talking point, nothing is very much clear. Their administrative system is also very unpopular to their own people. So when Bangladesh, in consultation with China, definitely in consultation with China, we got some prescription from China to solve the crisis in a bilateral way. And as we have no chance to ignore China because of many things, because of huge investment here, huge investment in Bangladesh from Chinese government as well as Chinese private sector. So Bangladesh has signed a bilateral arrangement, and 3 or 4 times the date have been fixed to started repatriation, but that doesn't work. Rather than Bangladesh, at the same time, when they say when we find that bilateral arrangement is really failure, at the same time these people, they have their memory is very sharp because they have been killed, their family member have been killed, their family member have been raped in the front of their eyes, and they are very young. So there are many kind of risks raised in my land, many kind of risks. At the same time, there are some global nasty power also who may use them. So Bangladesh try to focus it as a regional issue, because if these Rohingya people will staying here day by day, year after year, so that would be not only burdening, not only not only a big burden for Bangladesh, but also it might hamper also China, it might hamper India, the big powers. So after that, China became little convinced, and now at least Myanmar said Rohingyas are his people, their people. On the very beginning, they said they are Bengal, they are from Bangladesh, they are from Chittagong. Now they say it is they are from at least Myanmar. So that's a big diplomatic achievement. At the same time, now in UNGA, last UNGA, this year UNGA is not might not be happen. Last UNGA I was there. There was a tripartite meeting: Bangladesh, China, and Myanmar, and the meeting was presided over by Chinese foreign minister. And there, Myanmar said that they will examine all the things, and they will take back their people. But right now, today, after some hours, five Rohingya people are already found COVID-19 positive. 3 today, 2 yesterday. So,
Yeah.
Karan, these people are physically not so good. These people are mentally very depressed. That should be. They don't have any state right now. So they are stateless people. Their food, they might have food crisis, though in the camp still Bangladesh government, in association with WFP and other international NGOs or international partners, we are giving them food and other things. But if COVID-19 is really spreading over there, because that is very density populated area and they are not very literate, so that would be create another humanitarian crisis. So now it's the responsibility of Bangladesh government, definitely primarily, but at the same times our international friend, especially the friend from China, especially India, especially USA, and definitely even UN, they have to take care of these
Mahfuz
guys.
Mishu, I just asked you just how you are treating the China is a Bangladeshi friends, and definitely we know about the business interest in between the country. But in the meantime, when China has a potential influence to the Myanmar military and also the Myanmar government, and in the meantime, when they are basically involving with that, so how you can expect something from the China as a friend to solve this problem?
So no doubt to say, China is one of our biggest friend now. If you talk about you know the term of economic diplomacy, and the now
Yes.
the world is running on this diplomacy, that is economic diplomacy. At the same time, I might say health diplomacy might be the top within this year, because already there is a conflict between President Trump and who, and there is a conflict between China and USA and other countries because of the source of this COVID-19 virus. So that's another debate. But we have no chance to ignore China. At the same time, we have no chance to ignore India, because you can't change your neighbors. You can change anything, even you can change your wife or your husband, but you can't change your neighbor.
Yeah.
So Bangladesh, the location of Bangladesh is very critical. So China needs us. Definitely, China needs us. At the same time, we need China. But we don't have the chance to ignore India as well, as because we have 1,44,000 square kilometer land border with India. So China was in against of our liberation in 1971. That's true. But after 1975, the role of China in our infrastructure, in our power plant, in our any big road and construction business, China is there. So we don't have the chance to ignore China. That's the big question. Second question is why, if anyone have any influence on the Myanmar government, Myanmar government means Myanmar military. I don't believe the government is run by Aung San Suu Kyi. Rather, the government is run by Myanmar army still. So if anyone have influence on Myanmar government, that is also China. So that's why we are Bangladesh government is trying to convince China in any ways, and Bangladesh government is trying to understand the China. If this Rohingya crisis would not solve, that only not create huge problem for Bangladesh and Myanmar. China will not get rid of this problem, because the extremism and terrorism is one of the biggest fear in the world right now, especially after the Holy Artisan attack. And you remember the biggest terrorist attack, the biggest extremist attack in Dhaka, and 12 or 14, if I am not wrong, total 20 people died there. So that's also a big issue, because these people have no food, they are very young. After 5 years they will be more younger, they have no work, so their head is empty. So if anybody target to create any militancy group among the Rohingyas, that is very much possible. Like, these people are stateless, so that would create a regional problem. I might say I'd like to thank Bangladeshi government that they can sell this idea, they can sell these future what I said, they can sell this idea to Chinese government, and China is now mostly convinced that this problem need to be solved. And as the problem is raised in the land of the Myanmar, so that must be solved from there. So Bangladesh we really have nothing to do except that taking care of these people right now, as they are in our land, as they are our brothers. But Myanmar have to take back these people. Karan said better that in nowhere in the world this huge number of people, it's really tough. At the same time, repatriation is a big issue, and Bangladesh government can't force Myanmar people to go back their country, because if you can't make Myanmar secure for them, why they will go?
Right.
Because they
Right.
come here for their safety. So if
Yeah.
this situation is not changing, so Myanmar have to prove to the world, Myanmar have to prove to China, Myanmar have to prove to UNGA that this place is now safe for this guy. Then they will go. So we have to wait. And you said Bangladesh is innocent victim. Definitely we are innocent victim. And you live in Cox's Bazar, so you know there is there are big crises between the host community as well as the Rohingya community. And in two Upazila, the host community are minority
Minority.
in the number. So I urge my international community, I urge UN as well as other agencies like UNHCR, WP, they have to taking care of the host community also, because these people are carrying them from the border. I have seen in my own eyes that the wounded people, they are carrying them and taking their arms because they were their brother. So if the Rohingya people forget this thing, that would create another internal problem among in the land of Bangladesh, and that would not be good for any of us.
Yeah, thank you, Mahfuz Bhai. And in the meantime, I think you also know that like most of the UNs, and they have a project like 30% project for the host communities. And in the meantime, I think that's they're all the time trying to keep it in mind. So I think they will answer best. So Karan, if I ask you like when the Mahfuz Mishu Bhai was talking about the international politics, and in the meantime, when you had an experience with the conducting interview of the survivors, so what are the common stories of the survivors exactly? Like why, I mean, what was their story, why that things is happened to them?
Well, for many, one of the things that, and I'm just going to go a little into how I started. I mean, we went into the first couple of days walking and being in the camp, and I have to say, I felt, and that was my first time being in a refugee camp. I felt that I had actually no business there, because I felt if I'm not a doctor, if I'm not a teacher, if I'm not there to build a well or to build toilets to help with all the really extreme existential needs, I shouldn't be here. Because I felt like this is what people needed and this is what was really necessary. We then had the opportunity to sit with an imam we heard children sing. So we went up to it, and it was a school, and they invited us in, the imam, and then we started to sit with many of the people around it. And then we started to explain who we are and what we do, and that we're from university, and then we talk with survivors of genocide and to document their stories, and they started to talk about their stories. And so people who didn't know each other, because they were all coming from different towns, was clear, and they really didn't know each other yet. We're talking about October, November 2017. It's not like a village went together and this is in Kutupalong, we all, set up the same tents and we're all in the same thing now. They still started to get to know each other internally, and that became very apparent to us. And so one person was saying something, and the other person you could see was saying, yeah, I had something similar. Or somebody was saying something, oh, I'm from this other town, from a different region, but something happened just like that to me too, 2 days later. And so the stories about having been discriminated for many, many years, having been asked, if you get married, you have to sign a paper that you're really not a Myanmar citizen, that you're from the outside. If you want to be official and you want to get married, that you have to pay, that you can't leave your town unless you get some permission. You can't really go to school easily. You don't really have access to health insurance easily. So there were clearly steps of discrimination that were targeted against them for many, many years and over time. And the Imam talking about sort of religious persecution in that sense, or religious restriction, about his mosque and his midrash at the time. And so all of these things were very similar to what we've heard and what I've heard in the past from other genocides. This is not something that happens from one night to another. There's oftentimes a set of stages that happens before, where people are being identified, discriminated, and ostracized, until the next stages of selected and concentrated, and up until, systematic murder. And so many of these stories of hate and discrimination were very similar to many of the other stories we've heard of genocide survivors in the past. And what was also clear, because we were talking to people who came from different areas of the Rakhine state and different towns, and the same thing was happening to them in the same days, there was clearly a conversation among the perpetrators, or a systematic approach to how they were going to go into these villages, how they were going to start burning down the villages, shooting people, throwing them out. That this was not a reaction to some local upheaval or uprising or civil war or anything like that, that there was a concerted effort to do the same thing in different areas, which then made caused us to say, okay, we should do a more systematic interviewing, to interview people from different towns, randomly select as much as we can, if that's even possible, and I don't have to go into the difficulties of that, but to really hear the stories from people from different places who have not talked to each other beforehand, and hear what they experienced. And also not approach it as, I want to hear a story about how you were attacked or anything like this, but rather tell us of what happened to you.
Yeah.
And let them tell their story. So we're not predicting, and we're not looking for particular stories. It was rather, we want to hear from you what you experienced, whatever that is. And because of that approach, we heard a lot of similar stories where we knew those are the stories that people really experienced.
Karen, if I added one of the questions, like I had an experience to work with you once, and I was basically off the record was sharing with you, like when you shared, like you have been working 20 years, but still the problem is going on. So if I ask you, because you have done a lot of work and a lot of documentations, and there's a lot of evidence, so what is the impact of this work, and how it will help to help them to get the justice, and how it will help the diplomats, journalists, and also the people those who are trying to figure out the exact fact?
God, I wish I had the answers. This problem is humongous. If whoever will solve the problem of genocide and prevent it, and etc., we wouldn't be here talking, right? It would be the Nobel Peace Prize forever. We don't have to give out a Nobel Peace Prize anymore. That would be it. It's unfortunately a very complex, whichever country, wherever, a really complex and very difficult years ahead. In many countries where genocides happened, it took many, 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 many years for life to be able to have again, to have a normal life, to have some sort of life. And sometimes it's in the country where it happened. And most often it's actually in the country where it didn't happen, because people weren't able to go back. Either they were not allowed, or they didn't want to because they were afraid of their lives if they were to go back. And so I live in Germany. We just had commemorated 75 years, the end of World War II. And I live in a country again where anti-Semitism, and for instance, those who are of Jewish faith have to worry about walking in the streets as Jews because they're being attacked. So what does that say? Where Germany is being thought of as a country that has commemorated, and it has done a lot of work, and it has, as the country that did the perpetration, but we are having challenges with racism and anti-Semitism on a daily basis here in Germany again. Or still, I wouldn't want to say, not again. So when it comes to Bangladesh, and there's something too, what I noticed when I came the first time, I was, and still am, utterly impressed by what Bangladesh as a country, as a nation, and as a people has done and is doing. Because exactly what you were just saying before, is about Cox's Bazar being it's the vacation town of Bangladesh. The town has a certain number of people, and the refugee camp is larger than the local population. That is a huge strain on the local area, of course. And it's a very, very difficult challenge for Bangladesh as a country and as the local area. And it's been very inspiring to see how much does get done, how much support there is from people and from the country, and how hard it is to deal with this. And while I see a lot of international support, I feel like people here in Germany or in many other countries have no idea the challenges and what is happening in Bangladesh, and have no understanding of how much work there is done and how much support we should be actually giving that we may not really are giving. Yeah. So I have a lot of respect and a lot of respect for what happened.
And also you feel that like those who work in the ground, like they will advocate and they will talk about those who doesn't know, even a lot of countries. So Mishu, if I ask you, like when Karin was talking about, and there's a lot of people work in Rohingya crisis, and and we know that like when the development country, they're talking about their health to the Bangladesh, and in the meantime we know that it's still the business inside with the Myanmar, and there's going on, and they are still implementing their own interest. So, and how do you think so about their contribution and their collaboration? Do you think they really want to solve these problems?
That's the $1 million question. I really don't know, and I really don't believe the Myanmar's government intention till now. At the same time, I am really worried about yes, China is playing some role, but about their how much they want to solve the problem immediately. That's a big question still. Even not why we blame only China. Even in this Rohingya issue in UN, our very close some neighbors like Nepal, like India, they never vote for Bangladesh, but they don't vote against Bangladesh because that's their own foreign policy. They remain abstain during voting. At the same time, you know about during UNSC, United Nations Security Council, all the time China and Russia doing voting against Bangladesh. I mean, in favor of Myanmar. That's why United Nations can pass any resolution in Security Council. So that's
though they are our friend.
Though they are our trusted friend, they are our very valuable friend, because we are making our nuclear power plant in association with Russia, and our all big project is done by Chinese government as well as Chinese private sector. So what Karan said, this documentation, the story of genocides, the story of their sufferings, these are really very important. I do believe these are very important, because I do believe someday it will come, because this case is still already in the International Court of Justice. And what Madam Aung San Suu Kyi said in International Court, the whole world have seen it and they don't believe it. Because, and that's the big question, a lady, a big lady, a Nobel winner lady, who might solve this problem, if really she had any control over her army, then it might be solved immediately. But if you solve it in military way, and there are a lot of provocation, Karan, there are a lot of provocation from Myanmar army. Sometimes they cross our sky limit, sometimes they enter in our land border also. But the political decision from Bangladesh government was not to go on this way, because we do believe that's not the way of solution. That's not the way of solution in this world. Like in 2021 we are living here, so the only arms and military is not the solving material. So Bangladesh is on right track, but the question is about the justice. The question is about the justice. My preference is either these people will go back on Myanmar or not. That the secondary question. The first question should be what Myanmar military did, what Myanmar government did. That was a state decision. State can't take a decision to cleansing any ethnic community, whatever they did. If they really did the big crime, if they really if they raped someone, if they killed someone, but do you have right to cleansing a whole community, cleansing a whole area. That's not possible. That's a big crime. So the world should be agreed that what happened in Rakhine State, what happened in Rakhine State of Myanmar, and what they did in Rakhine State with the people of Myanmar, with the children of Myanmar, with the ladies of Myanmar, with the old guys of Myanmar, that is a big humanitarian crime. And so we have to solve it. And if we can't make the justice, that would be a very bad example for the others who wanted to kill the people, who wanted to abolish the human, what I say, who want to abolish some part of human, uh, want to vanish them, they will be inspired. So it's not only the responsibility of international court, but OIC sometimes we called it OIC. I mean, they have really no role in real diplomacy. But on this issue, we have find that Gambia went the court, and on that court, what the documented they have presided people like Karen, who have interviewed the Rohingya peoples, other journalists, other development worker who have some documents of killing the people, rape in the Myanmar, that is submitted by Gambia, and the international court took this, and they said, yes, what happened in Myanmar, that's a crime, and that crime has been done by Myanmar government, Myanmar army. So already there are some imposed on individual army officer from USA and some other countries, but it's not a individual issue. It was a collective issue. It was the decision of Myanmar government. So Myanmar government should be punished on this account of. So that's the big crisis. And in this issue, the whole world should be united. Even I have talked with some of my friends from Myanmar. Myanmar, they have no press freedom, but still there are some people who do believe that Myanmar government is really responsible for this. Because yes, definitely there are some crises, but that should be solved. They have the opportunity to solve this crisis in many other way, but not killing the people. Killing the people could not be any solution. So that's a big issue. At the same time, as a country of Bangladesh should try, and Bangladesh is really trying to convince the Myanmar to take them on board. And there is a framework agreement. There is a bilateral arrangement, and there is a steering committee headed by the Foreign Secretary of Dhaka and Naypyidaw, and they have to sit together. And most of the time they are sitting, and Myanmar is declaring some date that yes, we will do this on this day. They make a time frame, but every time they violated it. So dealing a country like Myanmar, it's really tough. At the same time, I should say one more thing, Karen. We have two neighbors. We have two very close neighbors. One is India, and another is Myanmar. We know everything about India. I know Indian song. I know Indian Prime Minister. I know Indian culture. I know Indian media. I know Indian everything. But most of the people in my country, they doesn't know anything about Myanmar. They doesn't know anything about Myanmar politics. They doesn't know about the lifestyle of Myanmar people. They doesn't know about the film of Myanmar. They doesn't know about the media of Myanmar. So you have to know your neighbors. That's a big crisis, I thought. If we really know Myanmar, at the same time, if Myanmar really know Bangladesh, then it would be easier for us to solve the crisis. And what it happened, sometimes I asked it to our former ambassador, Mr. Shahidul Haq. He has a huge experience with IOM, and he made the work with Myanmar. He said last 40 years, last 45 years, 43 years, the Myanmar was in trouble because of their internal militancy. Sometimes in Myanmar have 17 or 18 army.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of them are rival army. One is Myanmar army, but sometimes their non-government army is more powerful than their own army. So Myanmar was in trouble. So Bangladesh can't make a real friendship with its neighbor Myanmar due to its internal problem. So when the internal problem is at least started solved, and there is a democratic process started with Madam Aung San Suu Kyi, then again, in Myanmar constitution, still they have to have any government, the which party is win, they have to have 30% minister from the army. So it's an army-backed democratic government, which is ridiculous. So that's also a big crisis. We don't know Myanmar, and the Myanmar don't know us. And if the neighbors don't know each other, then the mistrust is established. So it's our duty, for a good friend of Myanmar, it's Bangladesh duty to give a clear idea about what we are. We really don't have any intention to take over the Rakhine states because we have enough. Number one, and we know if any country want to have their influence in other countries, what happened, because what Pakistan did with us, we are the sufferer. So Bangladeshi people don't have any intention to go any conflict with Myanmar government as well as Myanmar people. So our intention is very clear. Our intention is what is the basic policy of our foreign affairs: friendship to all, alliance to none. So that's our foreign policy declared by father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and that still prevails. And we are friend of India. At the same time, we are friend of China. We are friend of USA. And because of our location, everybody has to count us. Because if really USA want to look after India, they need Bangladesh. They need
Yeah,
Bay
I
of
mean,
the
geologically, we are very in interesting place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
At the same time, if China want to do anything in India, they need Bay of the Bengal. So that's our plus point, strategical plus point.
Your
So
geopolitical position,
yeah,
yes.
geopolitical achievement also. So that's our point. But we don't want to harm anybody. That message Bangladesh government have to clear to to the whole world. Bangladesh government have to clear to the international community. Bangladesh have to take them in their own account, and so the whole world will create pressure on Myanmar. Some days ago there are some people who are in the Bay of Bengal, and they are from Myanmar, and some ministers from UK also called our foreign minister to take them again. And this time Bangladesh really did the job, and
Yeah,
they
I
said
mean, there was around the 300
again.
Rohingya standards on the
Yeah,
sea and the human trafficking issues. And that time, the foreign minister said, "Why is only the responsible for the Bangladesh?" And that time, he also asked to the UK to bring to their royal ship to take the Rohingya people. I mean, the forcibly displaced people in their own
interesting.
country. Yeah.
One more interesting. After this Rohingya crisis, many foreign friends coming here, they're visiting Cox's Bazar. Big countries like Turkey, big countries like Saudi Arab, they are kings, they are queens, they are princes, they come. So, all on a sudden day, one Bangladeshi officials from foreign ministry, they offered one big Muslim country. They said about Muslim brotherhood and other things, that we are with you, and so-called diplomatic language. They said, yes, you are our friend. Can you please take 100 Rohingya as a token?
What was the
It will
answer?
be a symbolic. You just take 100 or 10 Rohingya. And if you 13 countries, the countries especially from Middle East, you take 100, so it will be 1,000. So that would be a appreciation, and that will inspire our other friends. And they said, no, we can't take. So that's a very dual role of our friends, of our international friends, especially the Muslim countries, big Muslim countries like Saudi Arab, like Iran, like Turkey. They also have the responsibilities. They're only coming here and giving some reliefs, giving some money to the people. That could not make any sustainable solution. So it's the duty of the whole community, duty of the not only Muslim countries, duty of our whole world, duty of India, duty of China, to stand beside Bangladesh. Not stand beside Bangladesh, stand beside these Rohingya people, because they are the survivors of genocide, because they have no country, because they have no one in the world. So
There's
that's
one
the
thing I
issue of
want to.
Yeah, Karen, please.
Yes, there's one thing I wanted to say too, that I've noticed, and I know that it's oftentimes, unfortunately, also a common thing, is that we all talk about them. We all talk about the Rohingya refugees. We all not Rohingya refugees. And so there's a lot of talk about them. But what I've noticed very early on, I haven't seen, that this might be on ignorance, a lot of talk with them. them being part of the table where conversations about policies, changes, options, how do we help, how do we do what do we need, what do you need, having them part of that conversation. And I think that's always a big challenge too for the group that's targeted, that has gone through the experience, actually being represented by themselves instead of being always talked about by all the so-called experts.
Around the world, there's the 47 countries who are the Rohingya. There's the Rohingya organizations, and there's a lot of international seminar where Rohingya has been participated, and there's a lot of Rohingya leaders and who are really working internationally for on the same tables, you know. So, and I think this is also especially for there's issues also like how we can bring them, because they have people try to bring them.
But I want to make a difference between those who are Rohingya who may have been able to leave and got educated outside and somewhere else versus those who are the refugees themselves. And for them to be able to communicate and be part of leadership conversations. And that being part of it very early on and very quickly is always something that is so, so, so important. And I hope that that's something that has really developed over the last couple of years.
Yeah, Mishu bhai, what about your comment on that? Because we know that Rohingya are not allowed to come out from the camps, and in the meantime, there's no proper access of internet. So how and why? And I know like there is a lot of any kind of foreign diplomat or any of the representative of the world, when they're coming, they used to visit the camps and they're talking with the refugees and they're listening their stories. So I mean, what about your comment on that? And how can ensure the more Rohingya peoples on the table to talk about their own stories?
You know, Bangladesh, officially Bangladesh don't say them Rohingya. Bangladesh said that the people coming from
forcibly
Myanmar,
displaced people from Myanmar.
Forcibly displaced Myanmar nationals. That's the official language from Bangladesh Foreign Office. At the same time, our friends sometimes they don't told it also Rohingya. As at the same time, Bangladesh don't declare them yet as refugee. Because if you give them refugee status, the lot of rights,
certain rights have to come with it. Yes,
has to be in the responsibility of Bangladesh government. So that's a big issue. So when Bangladesh government stopped the 4G mobile connection in the Rohingya camps, so you have to find out why it was done. Because you know, if I am not wrong, already 4 or 5 local people have been killed by the Rohingyas in different issues, and you know, camps are very much open. So Bangladesh police, Bangladesh army, Bangladeshi agencies, they are taking over this area after these, and the restriction being very much restricted. And if last I visited the Rohingya camps in March, on the very first week of March, before this crisis here in Bangladesh. So if you go to the Rohingya camp now, you find all kind of permanent infrastructure. So these are not short time infrastructure now. The wall is made by bricks. The area is made by permanent fence. So we know they will be almost like permanent here. So if you talk about the mobile connectivity there, it's not a basic right, definitely. So Bangladesh government is not bound to do this, number one.
Yes.
Number two, yeah, Bangladesh government in association with UN and other friends, they are ensuring their foods, their treatment, and you know already there are hospitals as well as isolation center inside the camp to prevent the COVID-19. So these are the major issues. And Bangladesh government stopped the 4G connection of mobile because of the proper information from the agencies. Because there are some ill people, there are some bad people among them. I'm not sure they are only people from Myanmar. Might be there are some people from local community, some people from my country, from Bangladesh. They may have some bad plan. So that's a big issue to stop them. So that was very much issue based and proper information based decision by the government. Now the question is about the security issue. Security issue is the biggest issue in any refugee-based area, you know. So Bangladesh have no chance to ignore it because our experience is very bad, you know. If you think about Seven Sisters of India, before 2006 or 7, 2004, 5, even after in night, no tourist can travel even. So, and there was a complaint against Bangladesh at that time that Bangladesh is taking care of these perpetrators, and they are entering from Bangladesh border. And after 2006, 7, 8, the situation is normal, and the defense budget of Indian government in the Seven Sister area is radically reduced. So India became safe because Bangladesh government is taking care of this border. So that's the international issue. At the same time, uh, Rakhine is our neighboring state. So we have to taking care of these people so they don't make any issues in Rakhine state also. So that might be also the plan of Myanmar government to again make any chaos in the Rakhine state to show the world that these people are really not good and they have to have some connection with the Bangladeshi peoples to make the Rakhine state unstable. So that's the big issue. As I have learned, I have talked on this issue with our foreign minister, Dr. Momen, and he gave me this explanation. And so basically, that was the explanation from my foreign office. And I do believe that government is on the right track.
Yeah, I mean, it's because the last few days and last 1 week, you also know in the local media, there was I mean, one of the local people has been killed by the few of the forcibly displaced people from Myanmar. So, I mean, so this issue is going on, and the host community also, they are also they're afraid of this. Consequence and also this contact. So, and regarding that, I think the both of the countries and will take the decisions and what will be wrong or what will be right. So, Karan, if I ask you, like, there are a lot of people are working and there's a lot of things is going on. So, what else can might do, and what things still need to do regarding these issues?
Which issues?
Especially the Rohingya crisis and to trigger them to get the justice.
Justice means different things for different people. One of the things that I have to say was talking with genocide survivors over many years is that for every survivor, what it means justice for them may not be the same thing as it might mean for you or for maybe their neighbor. So I think it goes back to listening to them, to giving them a voice, to be part of the conversation, to understand what is justice for them in a sense. Is it something where it's about commemoration? Is it about being able to get your own house back? What's the reality of that? To get back your property? And if you can't, what is the future? And I think one of the biggest probably challenges is, and I think my colleague was talking about this before, about the generation, the young people in the displaced persons camp that is around this Cox's Bazar. What is the future for the young people? What is the future for these kids, for the teenagers that are in there now for many, many years? What do they dream about? What do they think where are they going to live in the next 10 years or 15 years? Will they be able to really have a schooling? Will they be able to have a job? Will they be able to have a family? And where is that? Will that continue to be in a displaced persons camp? Or can they have a future somewhere like we all deserve to have a future? And I think providing that is a challenge, but I think for us to continue to keep the topic on a global, whether it's global news, whether it's the UN, whether it is locally within your country, whether it's within the country I am, whether it's in the other, I think keep talking about this and keeping it up and raising the awareness about what is going on. And I think that's one very, very important thing we have to do. And and to continue to talk to each other and see how we can, even in our own little world. I mean, you, Suzette, working with Art Evolution, doing different works and trying to have a connection and keeping that connection with people, I think is another important aspect. And then we just have to hope that countries and politicians and decision makers come together with Myanmar displaced persons, Rohingya population leadership, whatever the framing and the terminology of how we want to be called or named, are part of a conversation together. I think that's a hope, and I will keep that hope alive, because without hope, I'm not sure I would continue to do the work I do.
Yeah. So, Mishubai, when she was talking about and maintaining the country's security and maintaining all the security issues, like what might Bangladesh can do, or what might international community can do to go further for the next step.
That's really nobody knows. But what Karan said regarding justice, yes, justice is different from man to man, but there are some universal idea about justice, like universal declaration of human rights. Human rights to me and human rights to forcibly displaced Myanmar people or Rohingya people is not the same. Yes, I know it, or not the same to Karen. But there is some universal idea about justice. So the man who killed, he is a killer. That's the idea of justice globally. So one who killed, he is a good person. That's not applicable in anywhere in the country. So that's my little difference with current. And second issue is what Bangladesh can do. Bangladesh have to make this issue alive in the global context, because a lot of things is happening in the world, like this COVID-19 and this coronavirus, and then health diplomacy and the role of WHO in the upcoming days. That will be big issues in global politics. At the same time, health diplomacy will prevail, because the prevention of this coronavirus, who discovered it, the medicine of coronavirus, its uses, its marketing, its price, this will be very much unfold issues in the upcoming diplomacy. But Bangladesh have to keep this issue alive, that this is a big issue. These people are neglected. These people are deprived. These people are stateless. So Bangladesh have to alive these issues in United States, alive these issues in all regional forum. I mean, European Union, like SAARC, like ASEAN and other forums. We don't forget the role of ASEAN, because they are very much connected with these two countries, especially with Myanmar. So the leaders of ASEAN can play a good role. The leaders of Muslim world can play a big role. So Bangladesh have to keep these issues alive. Whatever happened in the world, but Rohingya issue is a big humanitarian issue. Rohingya issue is a big diplomatic issue for the whole world. Bangladesh have to keep it alive. At the same time, Bangladesh is not only suffering from Rohingya issues. Another 42 countries is suffering, like Malaysia and other countries. So Rohingya people have to raise their own voice in social media, own voice in world media, own voice in local media, everywhere. So Rohingya people also should be united to raise their own issues. That's another big challenge. At the same time, the one trial process is going on in the international court. So that also keeping alive at the same time. The challenge of Bangladesh is to convince, the first challenge I think, to convince India and China. And that Bangladesh have to do by its own means, because India is our trusted friend. They are our partner, liberation war even in 1971. So India had a big role, and India has a big influence in Bangladesh politics also. Not China had the influence in Bangladesh economics also, but India has big influence on Bangladesh politics also. So if you want to make this political and economical power together at the same time, then I think it would really work. So that's the challenge for the Foreign Office, as well as Bangladesh Army, Bangladesh Defense, Bangladesh Border Guard, to keep the border safe. At the same time, give the Myanmar a strong message that we are not weak, because only army is not the deciding factor in your to showing your power. You have to have good friends, you have to have good economy, you have to have good political stability, which is very much prevailing here in Bangladesh. And that is and in any social indicator, Bangladesh is far away from Myanmar, far ahead of Myanmar. So these are the issues. So Bangladesh have to keep the issues alive. At the same time, as Bangladesh is taking these people, Bangladesh have to taking care of these people. So there is no way to ignore these refugee people living in Cox's Bazar. We have to secure, we have to make them secure, we have to taking care of their health, we have to taking care of their child. At the same time, we have to taking care of their mental health also. Otherwise, there will be big crisis might raise in this area.
Yeah, I think that's I mean that's the issue, like when the France country and neighboring country when they're playing like the de facto roles to solve the problems together, and in the meantime there is the confusions. So and we are already end of the show. So Karen, so if you have any message to give to the world or anything you want to say to the world audience, I think it will be amazing. And
Um,
there's a few of the audience from Rohingya, and they're from the different country, and so they're also observing and they're also writing about their comments. So I think please, if you have any message for them, like you can.
well, I wish I wish I could see into the future. But all I can see, I can look into the past and I can understand of what happened in the past. And I think the importance is of being able to have people be able to tell their story and for us to listen. And I think for us, not only as a world to listen, because that's so big, and the world is people. The world is you, is me, is us here. The world is everybody who's sitting. So I think we all have actually a responsibility in our own little world that we live in to make good and positive choices. And I think if we all do that, we will actually make a change in the big world. And that goes for us as individuals, whether we work in a university as researchers, as documentarians, as journalists, as diplomats, as health workers. I think we all have the power and the responsibility to be responsible about our little world and about the big world. And so all I can say for us, that not to feel overwhelmed when we talk about these experiences and when we look into the places where we talk with survivors who've had really difficult and challenging and horrendous experiences, that we give them hope, that we listen to them, and that we take of what we hear from them in seriously and make changes in our own world that we can, as much as we can. And I will continue to do that till I can't. So that's how I see us making, hopefully changing the world to a better place.
Yeah, thank you. So Mishu bhai, I think you also know that like you started there as a security council member will hold a close BTC meeting on Myanmar, and especially then boys, and still, and we are hoping that something will come up with that. And what about your message to the world and to the audience?
My message is nothing is more important than people's life. So any refugee living anywhere in the world, they are like me, they are like you, they are like us. So we have to be sympathized on them. We have to stand beside them. And you know, in 1971, many big power in the world, they were in against of Bangladesh on that time. But the people of that very country were in favor of Bangladesh. So they arranged concert, they raised the voice in their own land. Sometimes they raise the financial activities and stand beside people. So now it's our duty to raise our voice for these Rohingya people around the world, for the Rohingya people in our camp. So if people are with us, if all the people raise their voice together, so I do believe on someday Myanmar will be bound to say that we are sorry. Myanmar will be bound to say that we are sorry, and now we have to take back. Now we have to give them all the rights. So that's the big issue. So it's our duty to raise the people's voice around the world for the displaced people, for the countryless people, for the affected people, and for the human being. So that's my appeal to the whole world.
Yeah, thank you, Karan, thank you, Mishu Bhai, for your wonderful times, and I think this is an amazing times, and you discuss a lot, and I think that there's a lot of key points that the world audience and they're getting, and thank you for your both of times, and I think you will stay safe and stay home, and I think though, I mean, for the journalists, I don't know how can I say like stay home because there's a responsibility to do something for the people. So thank you very much for your wonderful time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, audience. So I think so. Another time we'll come back with another guest, and please stay safe and stay home in your times. And we are trying to bring this idea so that all world can work together. We believe during the time of lockdown, recreation, entertainment, and the creativity is on lockdown. So bye bye for tonight.